This video is a description about exposure anxiety, what it is, and some tips about working with it. I'm in my 40s now, but when I was younger, I had significant chronic avoidance, diversion, and retaliation responses. And these developed, I guess, not only in relation to an environment that I found extremely challenging, but because I was somebody who was face blind, who was meaning deaf, who had disconnectedness from my body, couldn't perceive my body as a joined together whole, who would get all other and lose self, get all self, lose other, and find it jolting when people tried to connect directly, who, when the closer people became, the more that they were in bits, the further they were away, the more that they were whole. And so I found it significantly overwhelming to have people directly interacting with me. The more that they interacted with me, the longer their strings of blah, the more meaning deaf I would become as I progressively fell behind in the ability to try to keep up with speech. So there were very good reasons. Also, things like emotional overstimulation, not being able to control those self-protection responses when I felt emotionally overstimulated by the intensity, by the directly confrontational nature, by the perceived social invasiveness of other people's interaction. And so with exposure anxiety, you learn very early that the ways to manage it is avoidance, if people keep pushing, diversions, if people keep pushing, retaliation responses. One of the problems is that you develop this mentality, this identity, that you are a person protecting yourself from the external world. So you begin to identify as a person who has to protect their own world at any cost, and that the intrusions of other people are the problem. So you get this them and us mentality. And once you get older and you start to see why you want to pursue interaction, you start to see why you want to pursue communication, you start to see why you want to have a body and develop self-help skills. The problem is that by then you've spent several years with avoidance, diversion, retaliation responses, so that they're now like a hair trigger. And you might find that it's not just the initiations of others that now put you into this, but it's your own desires and initiations that self-protective part takes as a sellout, finds as a threat, and then throws you into avoidance, diversion, and retaliation responses against your own initiations. So what does this look like? It looks like somebody who for example, might go up to make contact with a child, and they look like they're going to make friendly contact, but then suddenly they've shoved or they've slapped the person or they've bitten them. They might want to interact, instead they'll just scream. They'll want to go and pick something up, but then they'll avoid it, they'll reject it. They'll need the toilet, then they might clearly need the toilet, but then once you help them to go there, you'll get all the avoidance, diversion, retaliation. They'll manage to do something that they knew they really wanted to do, and then they'll destroy it, because if you noticed it, if you tried to join them through it, that becomes a threat. And the only way to undo that threat and to placate that raging self-protection force is to smash the thing that you've just created. And so this is an extremely frustrating condition for somebody to be managing, because they know, they may ultimately know that they care about you, that they want contact with you, that they want to learn things, that they want a place in the world. And they can't work out why their body isn't listening, why their emotions go over the top, why they end up feeling like they've sabotaged and they've failed in the very things they wanted to do. So that's why exposure anxiety is called the invisible cage, because you're giving out these mixed messages, and you're trying to get through the bars at the same time you're identifying with the bars. You know it's a prison, at the same time you treat it as your sanctuary. You want to escape that world, at the same time you defend it with everything you have. It is that battle to join the world and the simultaneous battle to keep that world out. So some of the ways around this is, how do we calm the nervous system? Well, first of all, you really need to address the sensory perceptual problems so that they are so reduced that there isn't that much to self-protect about. If you've got someone who's disoriented, who isn't getting the level of nutrition to their brain, who's dealing with high toxicity, deal with the gut immune metabolic issues so that they are better able to handle sensory perceptual input, so that information coming in is cohesive, so they're able to keep up better, so there's less to automatically defend through avoidance, diversion, retaliation responses. If you find that you are emotionally overstimulating this person, and that together with overwhelming them sensorily is heightening that self-protection response, you can reduce that in a whole lot of ways. One of the most easy things to do is, instead of being opposite them, which is quite sensorily bombarding and in the animal world quite potentially threatening on a physical level, if your nervous system is this hair trigger, heightened reactive state, you go off to the side. Instead of interacting with them directly, which in their state can be taken as socially invasive, no matter how much they want it interpersonally. Instead of interacting with them directly, if you interact through the object and the issue instead of the person, the heat comes off and they can relax. Watch how many autistic people interact with each other. They do so in parallel via an object. When they do tend to bombard each other directly, one will tend to start tuning out the other and becoming indirectly confrontational. So take that as your language. Adapt to your behavior. Keep things small doses. If you always push the interaction to the point that the person went into avoidance, diversion, retaliation, you reinforce the lesson that the world will always overdose them. The world will always force feed them with interaction. You want to turn that around. You want to so leave them with the constant experience that they had been left wanting more, that sets up a competition with their identification with their self-protection mechanisms. How could that stuff be protecting them when the world was not overwhelming them? How could that stuff be protecting them when they had been left to do the chasing, when they had been left wanting more? So play hard to get, keep things small doses, always leave them wanting more. Work in parallel, address the object and issue, not the person. Keep things third person, keep them relatively formal, keep them low key. If you're going to praise, don't get in their face with, "Good boy, yay, look at what you did," because we're not all that type of personality. Our nervous systems aren't all designed that way. And there are a number of people with autism who became significantly more autistic after the big first or second birthday. So maybe the way to praise is, instead of putting it on them directly, is being off to the side, looking at the object and saying, "I wish I could do something that good," and then walk off. Walk off to allow them that processing space to feel non-invaded as they digest their own feelings about someone having said something about what effectively is a bridge between their world and your world. And bridges can be threatening. If you believe that other people are the invaders, that they always overwhelm, that they always give you more than you can handle, then bridges are quite challenging. You want to treat those bridges with respect. Another way with exposure anxiety that you can reduce it is by using characterizations, by using voices, by using puppets, by using costumes. As long as it's not you, there's nobody being exposed. Attributing the responsibility to the object. It's not you they're asking, it's the toilet roll that needs to go to the bathroom. And then once you've gone to the bathroom, then you're able to use it. It's not you who's being asked to get in the car. It's the keys that want to go to the car, and you just happen to be the person holding them. Anyway, you can find more information in the book Exposure Anxiety: The Invisible Cage, which is on my website, donnawilliams.net. All the best.